Good morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here, preparing for the Outsiders and First Dog on the Moon, Sunday the 13th of November. As you can see, we have had 24.6 millimetres since yesterday, 8/8 cloud, but there is no actual rain on the horizon, so I'm going to attempt to record the broadcast outside on the veranda as usual. And if I start getting rained on, well, I've broken up some firewood and I have laid the fire. So if I have to, we will move during the recording. In the meantime, empty the rain gauge into the swimming pool as a negative, sympathetic, magical manoeuvre to suggest that having prepared for more rain, therefore there won't be any more rain in the immediate future.
Time now for Outsiders. I'm Barry Cassidy, and you're not. Neither of these people. Terry Barnes, he's a policy consultant, former Howard government advisor. Charis Palmer, she's deputy editor of The Conversation. And Ebony Bennett, deputy director of Canberra-based think tank the Australia Institute. Welcome all. Good morning. Good morning. That's what people saying, Caris. Come on. Fire up, people. We have to be announced today, we understand, a deal on asylum seekers. Terry, that's a big political win if refugees can find a home in the United States.
That's right. I mean, I think if I was on the Roo, I'd be actually very happy at getting a solution, a West Pacific, West Coast solution back to the US, but which gives them a chance to go into the greatest melting pot in the world and try and make their life a better one. But getting people off the Roo, I think, not out of Manus Island is the priority here, and I think that's a good thing, full stop.
I mean, this, Ebony, has been a conspicuous failure, and the question of resettlement over these, 3 years that most of these people have been in detention.
Absolutely. I think that this announcement confirms that these camps have really been a total disaster. We've had one person murdered, Reza Barati. We've had 2 people self-immolate, and we absolutely have to find a safe pathway for asylum seekers. And I think it is absolutely important that we are getting them out as soon as we can. But the alarming thing about this announcement is it's a confirmation, according to senior sources in the government, that these camps are forever. This isn't some kind of a clearing out of refugees and asylum seekers so that they can close them down. This is forever, and that is really alarming. The idea of holding people in these kinds of, horror camps for forevermore is, something I think we should all be horrified by.
Because that's the possibility, isn't it, Charis? I mean, this would be for people whose refugee status has been confirmed, point A. So there's a body of people who are in a kind of limbo then if they haven't got the determination, and some may decide, I guess, not to go to the United States, and that leaves them in limbo still.
Yeah, that would be troubling for those that don't fall in the right kind of corral here, which is what this is all about. It's about working out how to corral people so that they're no longer a political liability for the government. But at the end of the day, the final hurdle here is still obviously going to be around the asylum seeker ban and whether these people, if they do go to the US, can ever come back to Australia, right?
Although it's said that that's, as far as the United States is concerned, not a problem. They don't need that to be passed.
That's not part of the deal.
Well, I mean, basically they're receiving more huddled masses, aren't they? So the reality is that both sides of politics have supported the mandatory detention approach. It'll be interesting to see what the Labor Party says in response to the announcement when it's made. Let's go, and we're talking United States, and the local response to the election of President-elect Donald Trump. This was one aspect of it.
This is going to put a shockwave to many people, many countries around the world. I think it's a revolution. I see it as a worldwide revolution, and this is all about people power.
Does that ring true, Ebony Bennett, for you, people power, and is that a thing which will become increasingly manifest in Australian politics?
I think it's important not to over-egg the situation in the United States, but I do think it is symptomatic of
I'm not sure that's possible, Ebony.
a rise of the right, the extreme right, worldwide. And I think that's what's most concerning about this election. Whatever the people's reasons are for voting Trump, what they have done is to endorse Trump's racist and misogynist behaviour and comments. And right across America at the moment, we're seeing harassment of minorities by people yelling out Trump's slogans. So I do think that that is the concerning element, and I'm a little concerned, I guess, at in the wash up we're seeing people kind of trying to reframe it as all about anger with people being left behind by globalization and economic inequality. And I have no doubt that that's, absolutely the reason why some people voted the way they did. But there is this real element of racism and misogyny that I think we really have to address here and around the world.
That's tricky, isn't it, Terry Barnes? I mean, we say, yes, there's a body of people whose concerns are not being addressed by politics, who are marginalised by politics. And some of those concerns are a legitimate part of the political conversation, but some of those concerns are not. How do we lend an ear and yet not give in to bigotry?
Well, it's an interesting point. The way I see it is, I take Ebony's points about the perceptions of Trump and his candidacy. But I think when we look at the election results from Tuesday, it comes down to the fact that it appears that many people thought that, one, the system wasn't working, two, Donald Trump was offering a change, and three, by playing to populist themes right across the board, and including promising something one day and promising something exactly opposite the next, depending on how things are going. That effectively we're having a sea change, I think, in terms of the political conversation right around the Western world. I mean, we talk about Brexit, we talk about what's happening with Marine Le Pen in France, we talk about here in Pauline Hanson. But also, I think on the left, in terms of the Greens, in terms of the populist agenda of in terms of some of their policies, the issue for me, Jonathan, is I think the sensible centre that needs to show some leadership on policy in terms of addressing tough issues in our economy and society is deserted the field. I mean, in Australia, the closest heir to Trump, in my view, I wrote a piece about it for the Spectator the other day, is actually Bill Shorten. He's the one who almost snatched office based on a totally shamelessly populist agenda, which had little real resemblance to real policy. And on the other hand, the coalition doesn't know what it stands for, doesn't know where it's going, and it is basically sort of floundering from day to day. If I was a voter feeling marginalised, I'd be feeling even more marginalised now than I did in July.
There's a challenge, isn't there, Charis, for the conventional parties to actually get out of this habit of political safety and to put out an agenda, to stand for something, to offer people solutions.
And to make tougher decisions. So the polarisation, while good for politics in a sense of good for votes, is not good for economies, the country, the world. And so if, for example, this discussion to call people who voted for Trump bigots because they voted for Trump, the same way we might call someone who voted for Hanson a bigot, is part of the problem. It's why the punditry got this wrong. It's why everybody's sitting around wondering what's going on now. And so we do have to rethink the discussions that we're having about either side.
I wonder too if there's implied in this is a repudiation of the sort of identity politics that have overwhelmed progressive politics in recent years. There's a little grab from a UK journalist by the name of Jonathan Pye.
And all you have to do is engage in the debate. Talk to people who think differently to you and persuade them of your argument. It's so easy, and the left have lost the art. Stop thinking that everyone who disagrees with you is evil, or racist, or sexist, or stupid, and talk to them.
He's an angry man, Ebony Bennett, but he kind of has a point.
He sure is, but I do think, there's merit to say the pundits and the pollsters, like the credit ratings agencies pre-GFC, really had one job here and they stuffed it big time. But I do think we can tap into and see that there is anger and resentment fueling partially this vote. The left certainly does have to do a better job, but I do think here in Australia it is worthwhile reflecting on, as Terry was talking about, where this kind of anti-establishment voting trend is headed. And in Australia, I think it's correct to say that we do have this strain as well. But we can see over successive elections that the non-major party vote has been increasing for a long time. But Terry's right to say it's more split. We've got a different electoral system here, and we've got the option to vote for the Greens, for Nick Xenophon, for Palmer United, for Pauline Hanson, for Family First, for Independents, and that's very much what Australians have been doing.
There's a real safety valve in that, is there not?
I think there certainly is, and that's what the major parties have to be concerned with. And I do think that's why you've seen Bill Shorten at the last election really focusing on, you know, who is going to benefit from $50 billion worth of company tax cuts? Not your average Joe, and that is a really powerful thing to be reaching out to people of, you know, of all walks of life in Australia to talk to them
The
about.
other side of that coin, Charis, for progressive politics, which increasingly has been dealing with those identity issues and has seen its triumph in this apparent new settlement around social issues, gender issues, things like gay marriage. Well, people don't have work. This is sort of what we're seeing represented. Why is progressive politics not offering a solution to those fundamental problems?
I think that there's a problem with overestimating the level of kind of, or maybe perhaps underestimating the level of anger in Australia and where that might head. So that economic problem of progressive politics, progressives talking about issues that people with the likelihood of losing their job in the next 5 to 10 years are just not interested in right now, in the longer term could end up looking more so like America. And we do have a rising inequality problem in a lot of places. There's plenty of evidence to support that. And if you look at that closely and you unpack it a little bit, you start to understand that that we're not really talking about these issues, that there's a sense that, take the Latrobe Valley with Hazelwood, I mean, it's been a long time coming, and yet we now have politicians saying, oh, we're going to put in a package, and it's like, well, hang on, shouldn't you have done that 5 years ago? So this short-term politicking is the problem here, and that feeds into this economic narrative of job losses and governments either sort of saying, well, we'll solve the problem. They can't solve the problem the same way that Donald Trump's not going to return the Rust Belt jobs. He's not going to give them back to the US economy. Our politicians are also not capable of doing that. If they promised that they're going to do that, they're going to come unstuck as well.
I mean, this is the thing, Terry Burns, is it not? I mean, progressive politics might think it can solve economic dislocation through same-sex marriage, but conservative politics tries to do it through meaningless jargon like jobs and growth.
I was at a conference actually last week where the general theme was creative innovation, and there's a lot of talk about the rise of robotics and artificial intelligence, and particularly driverless cars. So basically destroying, and then driverless vehicles destroying jobs virtually overnight if they come on stream in a big way. And it does strike me that in the political conversation at the moment, it's great to talk about driverless cars, but if you don't have a job and you don't have anywhere to drive to, what's it all about? And I think those elites, political, intellectual, economic, within the bubble, are forgetting that there are a great many people out there who don't have the same mindsets as they do. But the other thing, Jonathan, just quickly, is I actually think we're heading towards a crisis of democracy, not just of ideology. Increasingly, the path to power is seen as simplistic, populistic solutions to very, very complex problems, and the willingness to have a conversation, to engage and to explain is going out the window. And the thing about Trump, if you want to look at it another way, is it's going back to the 1930s in the sense of the man on horseback sort of riding in to save the day, and put your trust in this bloke and we'll see how we go.
We don't want to push that 1930s thing too far, because that ends
in the crisis of
burning of the Reichstag.
But in the terms of democracy and crisis, it went through a crisis then. I think it's starting to go through a crisis now.
Terry Barnes is a policy consultant, a former Howard.
Okay, they're calling it to a halt. I better too.